I knew something was wrong the moment the pills turned pink. For years, my blood pressure medication had been a dull beige, chalky, bitter, ordinary. But the ones in my weekly pill box this morning were pink, smooth, shiny, a different shape. I stared at them, trying to remember if maybe the pharmacy changed manufacturers, but they hadn't sent a notice, and I hadn't missed a refill. I knew what I'd been taking. My name is Nancy Henshaw. I'm 74, and I'm not a fool. Still, I swallowed them. I always did what I was told, especially since the stroke 3 years ago, when everything changed. When my son Michael and his wife Brianna moved me into their guest room, rearranged my kitchen, took over my mail. For my safety, they said. Brianna especially. "We just want to take care of you, Nancy." She'd smile. But it was never a warm smile. It was the kind that ended at the corners of her mouth, not in her eyes. I sat by the window after breakfast, watching the oak leaves tremble in the breeze. I used to feel sharp in the mornings, even after the stroke. But lately, my mind felt muddy. I'd sit down to write a grocery list and forget what I came into the room for. I'd fall asleep in the middle of the day, waking up with my neck at a strange angle and no idea how long I'd been out. At first, I thought it was just age, or maybe the weather, or maybe just sadness. I'd lost my husband, my home, and bit by bit, myself. But today, with those pink pills in my stomach, something shifted. Brianna came in mid-morning, holding a stack of folded laundry and her ever-present mug of green tea. She was 39, thin in that tight, drawn way some women get when they're always thinking about calories. Her hair was perfect, her lashes darker than they used to be. I once tried to compliment her. "You look very polished." She heard it as judgment. I never tried again. "Did you take your meds?" she asked, not looking up from her phone. "I did," I said, "though they look different." "Same ingredients, just a different brand," she answered quickly. Too quickly. "Cheaper with the new insurance." I nodded, but my stomach tightened. She didn't work in healthcare. She wasn't a pharmacist. She was a personal coach and whatever that meant. And yet, somehow, she was the one managing my prescriptions. After she left, I went to my drawer, where I used to keep my pill bottles, locked. Now I was only allowed the weekly organizer. "Too many bottles are confusing, Nancy," Brianna had said. "We'll do it for you." At the time, I was grateful. I'd just come home from rehab. Everything was overwhelming. I didn't realize what I was giving up. I sat on the edge of the bed and felt something unfamiliar settle into my bones. A kind of quiet, measured anger. Not the loud kind. The slow burning kind that starts in your spine and makes your hands still. The rest of the day passed like a film with the sound turned down. Brianna worked in her office upstairs. Michael came home late, gave me a distracted kiss on the head, and asked how I was feeling. "Fine," I lied. Because what was the point of saying otherwise? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the pills, about the way my hands had started to tremble when I buttoned my blouse, about how Brianna had insisted I stop driving, about the doctor's visits I no longer attended. "We'll just renew your prescriptions online, Nancy. No need for all that hassle." I got up around midnight and walked, barefoot, to the kitchen. The house was dark, silent. I opened the refrigerator. Inside, neatly labeled in Brianna's handwriting, were her supplements. Hair, skin, nails. Energy support. Probiotic blend. Rows of gleaming jars like something from a showroom. I stood there for a long time, chilled by the light of the open door. The next morning, I dressed early. Simple pants, soft sweater, flats. I told Brianna I was going for a walk. She barely looked up from her phone, but I didn't walk. I took a taxi into town, to the pharmacy I'd used for years. The man behind the counter remembered me. "I was wondering if you could tell me what these are," I said, handing him one of the pink pills from my organizer. He studied it, then stepped into the back room. A few minutes later, he returned with a printout. "These aren't lisinopril," he said gently. "They're a supplement, not FDA approved. Something called Cardio Balance Plus, mostly plant extracts and magnesium." I stared at the paper. "So, it's not real medication?" "No, ma'am, not for blood pressure. It won't hurt you probably, but it won't help either." I nodded slowly, folded the paper, thanked him. On the taxi ride home, I sat in silence, holding my purse tightly on my lap, watching the pine trees blur past the window. I wasn't confused. I wasn't losing my mind. They had replaced my medication with a vitamin blend, for my safety. When I walked back into the house, Brianna was on the phone, laughing. I smiled at her politely. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Perfect," I said. And for the first time in a long, long while, I meant it. The hardest part about losing control is how quietly it happens. One small decision at a time. One "let us help" after another. After my stroke, I was so scared of slipping in the shower or forgetting the stove that I said yes to anything that made life feel safer. I didn't notice the locks going on cabinets, the keys I used to carry quietly disappearing, the phone numbers in my own book being replaced with, "Use this one instead, Mom." Brianna was so good at sounding kind. That professional tone, soft, calm, filled with concern that didn't quite reach the soul. "We just want you to feel supported." Supported felt an awful lot like silenced. I remember the first time she brought in the pill organizer. "You'll love this," she said, like she was giving me a gift. "No more fiddling with bottles. I'll fill it for you every Sunday. Less hassle." I was sitting at the kitchen table, still shaky from therapy. I nodded. "Thank you, dear." It didn't feel like a loss, not then. It was months before I realized I didn't know where the actual bottles were. When I asked, she laughed. "Nancy, do you really want to keep track of all those? They're in the upstairs cabinet." "Don't worry about it." Upstairs, a place I hadn't been since the stroke. Michael didn't notice, or didn't want to. He's a good man, quiet, responsible, soft-spoken like his father was. But he's tired. Brianna does most of the talking for both of them now. In the early days, I told myself this was just a phase, that once I got stronger, they'd let me take back more. But strength didn't matter. I passed my follow-up appointments. I could walk to the mailbox and back without help. Still, the structure remained, like I'd been frozen in place. After the visit to the pharmacy, I sat alone in my room for a long time. I held the printout in my hands, the list of ingredients I couldn't pronounce. Hawthorn berry, olive leaf extract, L-arginine. None of them harmful. None of them helpful either. Just noise in my blood, where there should have been something real. I opened the drawer where I kept my old photo albums. Not out of nostalgia. I was looking for something. Proof of who I used to be. There, tucked behind a picture of my husband and me at Lake Eden, was the small brown notebook I used to carry everywhere. The one where I wrote down my appointments, my medications, even grocery prices. I hadn't opened it in months. I flipped through the pages. My old dosage. The date of my last refill before Brianna took over. the contact for Dr. Simons, the primary I hadn't seen since they switched me to online consultations. Everything was there, clear and steady. I hadn't imagined any of it. That night, while Brianna was in the bath and Michael was watching something on his tablet with headphones on, I crept into the upstairs hallway. My legs protested, but I made it, quiet as I could. The cabinet next to the linen closet was locked, not just child-proofed, actually locked. A tiny silver padlock, as if I were some toddler who couldn't be trusted not to drink bleach. I didn't have a key, but I did have time. The next morning, I waited until Brianna left for her client walk and Michael was in the shower. I took the small screwdriver from my sewing basket and wedged it gently into the lock. I'd seen a video once, back when I used to browse the internet freely. 2 minutes later, the cabinet clicked open. Inside, everything was lined up with painful neatness. My old prescriptions, still sealed. My name on each label. Lisinopril, amlodipine, a tiny bottle of atorvastatin for cholesterol. All untouched. Not one pill removed. My breath caught. She'd never intended to give them back to me. I took them, carefully, quietly, and hid them in a place I knew she'd never look. Inside the dusty bag of yarn under my bed. I'd pretended to give up knitting a year ago when the tremor started, but I kept the supplies, just in case. Over the next few days, I replaced the fake pills in the organizer with the real ones, little by little. I wanted to feel what it was like to live in my own body again. And slowly, I did. The fog began to lift. My heartbeat steadied. My hands grew more certain. I also began watching Brianna. She had her own rituals. Protein shakes in the morning. Half an hour of intentional silence where no one was allowed to speak to her. A shelf full of beauty supplements labeled with her name in gold marker. "These are expensive," she once told me. "Formulated just for women in their 30s. My skin is my brand." She took them religiously. 6 pills every morning. Washed down with lemon water and smugness. That's when the idea began to form. Not revenge. I don't believe in revenge. But there is something to be said for perspective. One afternoon, while she was on a video call in the living room, I slipped upstairs, swapped the labels on 2 of her vitamin bottles. She never counted her pills. She trusted the look of the bottle, the brand. I placed some of my old medication inside, the one marked Glow Boost Elite, a few tablets of atorvastatin, a dose or 2 of metoprolol, safe in the right hands, under guidance. Mild enough in small amounts to cause only drowsiness, sluggishness, a little confusion. Just enough to make her feel like me. The next morning, she didn't say good morning, just sat at the table, staring at her tea. "You all right?" I asked. She blinked, as if the question took a moment to reach her. "Didn't sleep well," she muttered. "Head feels thick." I sipped my coffee. "Probably the weather." It didn't take long before the house began to shift around her. By Thursday, Brianna was stumbling over words. She kept calling the dog by the wrong name, and we didn't have a dog. She snapped at Michael over dinner about the thermostat being set to 12. He stared at her. "It's 70, Brie." But she looked unconvinced, and I just sat there, hands folded neatly in my lap, watching the scene unfold like a quiet play I'd already read the ending to. I'd returned fully to my medications 3 days prior. The difference was striking. My head no longer felt like it was full of static. I could track time again. I could smell the difference between soap and detergent. I could finish the newspaper crossword, not just start it. Everything that had felt slippery began to return to form, but I didn't let on. "You seem sharper," Michael noted one morning, glancing over his coffee. "You're getting around better, too." "Rest helps," I said simply. Maybe I turned a corner. He smiled, distracted, already checking his phone. He didn't see the truth behind my eyes. He didn't ask. Brianna, on the other hand, was unraveling by degrees. Not dramatically. Not yet. But her hands had started to twitch. She burned the soup on Wednesday, which was unusual. She'd prided herself on consistency, schedules, performance. Now she couldn't remember if she'd taken her supplements or not. I made sure she did. Every morning, I handed her that swapped bottle myself. "Don't forget your Glow Boost," I'd say sweetly. And she'd nod, distracted, swallowing it down with her lemon water. By Friday, she was late for her client sessions. Her sentences had holes in them. She went upstairs to fold laundry and came back empty-handed. She stared at the washing machine like it was a stranger. I followed her sometimes. Not out of malice, out of curiosity. It was like watching someone grope through fog, not understanding why the air had turned thick. I knew that feeling. I'd lived in it for months. Now she walked in it, disoriented, frustrated, frightened in ways she wouldn't admit. And still, she never once asked me how I was doing. Not once. Michael noticed the changes, of course. You can't live in a house with someone and not see their edges start to fray. But he chalked it up to stress. "She's got a lot on her plate," he said one evening while we were watching the local news. "New clients? That presentation next week?" I didn't reply. I let him fill the silence with excuses. That night, I heard them arguing through the floorboards. Her voice was high, panicked, nearly shrill. "You don't understand," she said. "My mind isn't working." "You're tired," Michael said, calmer. "You've been burning the candle." "I'm forgetting things," she snapped. "Simple things. I couldn't remember how to open a Google Doc today. I stood at my computer like I was 80. I pressed my lips together in the dark. No need to say it out loud. The next morning, Brianna didn't come downstairs. Michael said she had a migraine. I made coffee and took my pills, my real pills, and wrote in my little brown notebook like I used to. 10:12 a.m. No Brianna. BP 12276. Steady. I hadn't felt so clear-headed in months. At lunch, she finally appeared. Pale, tense, her eyes darting like a bird in a storm. She didn't speak much, just stirred her soup and stared through me. "I think I need to see a doctor," she murmured. I looked up. "For what?" "My memory," she whispered, as if saying it louder would make it true. Michael looked alarmed. "Maybe we should take you to urgent care?" She shook her head. "I don't want that on my record. I'll make an appointment Monday." I didn't react. I didn't push. Let the cracks spread naturally. That was the thing about false control. Once it slipped, everything beneath it trembled. That evening, when the house was quiet and Brianna had retreated to bed early, I opened the cabinet under the sink. That's where I'd found the hidden box of my prescriptions just days earlier. I pulled it out and took inventory. All bottles still full. Not one refill missing. I ran my finger over the labels. My name. My prescriptions. My life. Hidden and denied. Like it didn't belong to me anymore. I wasn't sure what made me do it. Maybe it was defiance. Maybe it was grief. But I stood up, pulled out my phone, and called the one person I hadn't spoken to in months. My old doctor. The receptionist still recognized my voice. She sounded surprised, then concerned. "We haven't seen you in over a year, Mrs. Henshaw. Is everything okay?" "I'd like to come in," I said. "In person?" "Of course. We can get you in Tuesday morning." Will you need assistance? No, I said. I can get there myself. And I could. That night, lying in bed, I heard Brianna get up. Heard her footsteps shuffle down the hall, then pause, then double back. Like she'd forgotten why she got up in the first place. I stared at the ceiling and thought, this is what she chose for me. Not care, not concern, control, disguised as love. And now, for the first time in a long time, the truth was walking through the house, in her own 2 feet. There's a moment, just before someone loses their grip, when they start to notice the edges. Saturday morning, Brianna didn't come out of the bedroom until nearly noon. She moved slowly, like her bones didn't fit right anymore. She didn't speak to me, just wandered to the fridge and stared into it for a long time, her fingers twitching against the door. Can I help you find something? I asked gently. She turned, startled. No, I forgot why I came in. I nodded, like that was the most natural thing in the world. Happens to all of us, dear. But it hadn't happened to her before. Not like this. I watched her fingers tighten around the edge of the counter, like she needed to feel something solid. She was wearing one of those fitness trackers, always tracking steps, sleep, water. Now, even her data wouldn't explain what was happening. Michael came in a few minutes later, kissed her on the cheek. She flinched slightly. Did you eat? He asked. I don't remember, she said. He looked at me. I kept stirring my tea. Later that afternoon, I found her sitting on the stairs, head in her hands. The sunlight caught the gray at her roots, just a thin line, barely visible, but it was there. She usually dyed it every 3 weeks. She hadn't noticed. She looked up as I passed. Her eyes were red. I think something's wrong with me, she whispered. I sat down a few steps above her, slow, steady. What kind of wrong? I'm confused. I can't think clearly. I keep forgetting words. My hands shake. She held them up. They were trembling, like mine used to. Have you changed anything recently? I asked. New food? New pills? No, she said quickly, then paused. Well, the new vitamins, the hair ones, but they're all natural. I hummed. Sometimes even natural things interact strangely with your body. She didn't answer. Her pride was catching up to her fear. I'm scared, Nancy. I reached out and placed my hand over hers. You'll be okay, I said. You just need clarity. But she wouldn't find it in her current mirror. She'd only see a version of herself she thought she could control. That night, she didn't eat dinner. Michael asked if she wanted him to call someone. She shook her head, almost violently. I'll figure it out, she said. I don't need help. That was the difference between us. When I felt myself slipping, I begged for help. She refused it, even now as her mind unraveled. After she went to bed, Michael sat with me in the kitchen, the soft sound of the clock ticking between us. I'm worried about her, he said. I know, I replied. She's not herself. I folded my hands. What does that mean? Herself? He looked at me, caught off guard. I mean, she's sharp, controlled, focused. This version, it's like someone else. Or maybe it's who she is when she isn't in control. He frowned. What are you saying? I'm saying people don't change under pressure. They show who they've always been. He didn't respond, just stared into his coffee like he could read answers in the foam. I didn't push. I'd said what I needed to. Sunday morning, I took a walk. Not far, just around the neighborhood. The air was cool and sharp, and for the first time in months, I felt like myself in it. Not a burden, not a patient, just a woman walking down her own street. When I came back, I passed Brianna's car. She hadn't driven it in days. Dust was settling on the hood. Inside, on the passenger seat, I saw a bottle, her supplements, the real ones, untouched. And I realized she hadn't taken them in at least 4 days. Which meant the effects she was feeling now weren't from the switch. They were from withdrawal. Her body had grown used to the daily stimulation. Collagen, caffeine extract, whatever else was packed into those pills she called nutritional elegance. Removing them had caused the fog, the shakiness, the confusion. She wasn't sick. She was simply off balance, the same way I had been when she'd taken my pills away. It was almost poetic. That afternoon, she went to her room and didn't come out for hours. Michael paced around the kitchen like a man waiting for bad news. "You think it's serious?" he asked me. I turned the kettle on. "Serious enough to talk about." He hesitated. "You've seemed better lately. Clearer." "I am." "What changed?" I looked at him evenly. "I went back to my real medication." He froze. "What?" "I found where she'd hidden them. I stopped taking the substitutes." His mouth opened, then closed. He looked like a boy again, trying to decide if he should apologize or defend. "She said it was safer," he muttered, "after the stroke. She made that decision alone." He sat down. "I didn't know." I nodded. "I believe you." There was a silence. Then he asked, quietly, "What else has she done?" I looked at him. Really looked. My son. The boy I'd raised. The man who'd let his wife become the gatekeeper of his mother's life. "That's not the question, Michael," I said. He looked up. "The question is, what are you going to do now?" By Monday morning, Brianna was unraveling faster than she could hide it. I found her sitting in the kitchen with both hands wrapped around a mug of tea she hadn't touched. Her hair, usually blown smooth, hung limp at her temples. No earrings, no makeup. Just her pale, bare face under the flickering overhead light. "Did you sleep?" I asked. She blinked, slowly. "I had a dream I was back in college. Couldn't find the exam room. Everyone was laughing at me." I sat across from her. She didn't look at me. Michael came downstairs with his briefcase in one hand and a granola bar in the other. He kissed her on the forehead and hesitated. "Are you sure you're okay? I can cancel today's meetings." "No," she said quickly, too quickly. "Go. I'm just off." He looked at me over her head. I didn't return the glance. After he left, the house fell into a thick silence. I did the dishes slowly, letting the sound of water fill the air. She didn't move, just sat there, caught in some silent storm. Around noon, she went to the bathroom. I heard the door click, then silence. 20 minutes passed, then 30. I knocked. No answer. "Brianna?" Still nothing. I opened the door gently. She was sitting on the closed toilet lid, fully dressed, staring at the wall. "I was going to wash my face," she murmured, "but I forgot how." Something in her voice was so small, so far from the Brianna I'd known. The efficient woman with her spreadsheets and bulletproof routines. I stood there, letting the silence stretch between us. "I think I'm losing my mind," she whispered. "You're not," I said. "You're just experiencing what happens when someone else makes decisions about your body without your consent." She looked up at me then, sharply. I didn't blink. "Did you do something?" she asked. "To my pills?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Her eyes narrowed. "You switched them?" "No," I said calmly. "I returned the favor." She stood slowly, swaying. That's sick. Is it? I asked. Or is it familiar? She pressed her hand to her temple. This isn't the same. You're right, I said. I never gave you anything dangerous. Just stopped giving you what you relied on, the way you did to me. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. We stared at each other in the mirror above the sink. Two women, 25 years apart, with the same lines etched at the corners of their eyes. Different battles. Same cost. You could have hurt me, she said. You did hurt me. She sat down on the edge of the tub and put her face in her hands. I waited. No gloating. No revenge. Just silence. I thought I was helping you, she said, muffled. No, you thought you knew better, I corrected. You decided that my judgment no longer mattered, that my voice didn't count, that aging means surrendering. She didn't argue. I lost myself for a while, I continued. I let you make the rules. I thought I was being grateful. But now I see what I gave away. I didn't mean to control you. But you did. She looked up, her eyes rimmed red. So what now? I looked around the room. Her expensive skincare lined the counter. The mirror was speckled with water spots she hadn't cleaned in days. The little signs of a woman no longer in command of her world. You go to the doctor, I said. You get a full panel and you be honest. Tell them everything you've taken and stopped taking. And you? I've already made my appointment, I said. Tomorrow morning. She swallowed hard. Does Michael know? He knows enough. We sat in silence again, surrounded by the quiet hum of the house. Finally, she asked, Why didn't you just talk to me? I did, I said. You just weren't listening. That evening, she went to bed early again. Michael and I sat in the living room, the news playing low in the background. I think I need to hire someone, he said, not looking at me. To help out. A nurse. Not because I think you need it. Just to make things clearer. I nodded. That would be a good start. And Brianna? She's going to take some time off. She called her doctor. I didn't respond. He turned to me then. Did you really switch her pills? I met his eyes. No. He looked confused. I never gave her anything harmful, I said. But I let her feel what it's like to live in uncertainty, in fog, to have your body drift away from your will. That was already happening to me, long before she noticed. He didn't speak. She'll be fine, I added. But she'll never forget it. And neither will I. By Tuesday morning, I was sitting in Dr. Simon's office for the first time in over a year. The nurse looked at me twice when I walked in alone. You're not with your daughter-in-law today? No, I said, calmly placing my purse on my lap. Not today. Dr. Simons was slower than he used to be, but his mind was still sharp. He scanned my chart, then looked at me over the rim of his glasses. It's been a while, Nancy. I nodded. I wasn't sure if I was allowed to come on my own anymore. He blinked, confused. What do you mean? I took the folded pharmacy printout from my purse and laid it on his desk. This is what I've been taking for months. He read it, slowly. When he looked back up, his face was different. Not just confused, appalled. This isn't medication. I know. Who gave you this? My daughter-in-law. She manages the pill organizer. She said it was safer than my prescriptions. He leaned back, exhaled. You've been off lisinopril, amlodipine, and atorvastatin for how long? At least 4 months, maybe more. He rubbed his temples. Jesus, Nancy. I found my real prescriptions in a locked cabinet. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "You seem lucid." "I am. You weren't before." "I know." We did the usual: blood pressure, reflexes, memory recall. I passed all of it, with numbers that surprised even him. "I'm not dying," I said flatly. "I'm recovering. You should have come sooner." I wasn't given the choice. He typed something into his computer. "I want to run a full workup. Blood panels, kidney function, just to be safe." "Fine." As I got up to leave, he stood too. "Nancy, what happened to you? That wasn't just neglect. That was medical interference. And if your family doesn't see it that way—" "I'm handling it," I interrupted. "My way." He paused. "Good." When I got back home, Brianna was in the kitchen in sweatpants, staring blankly into a half-empty fridge. "You went out?" she asked. "I had a doctor's appointment." She flinched slightly. "Without telling anyone?" "I didn't know I needed permission." Her mouth twisted, like she wanted to say something biting, but couldn't find the words. That alone told me the tide had changed. Michael came home early that day. He seemed quieter, more cautious around both of us, like he was trying to track invisible lines and not cross any of them. After dinner, he sat with me on the porch while the sun slipped down behind the trees. "I've been thinking," he said, "about everything." I said nothing. "I let it all get too far," he admitted. "I didn't see it, or I didn't want to." "Maybe both," I said. He nodded. "I don't know how to fix it." "You start by not assuming I need fixing." He winced. "Fair." We sat in silence for a while. The porch creaked. A breeze picked up. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the person waiting to be told what to do. I was just someone watching the light change, with no one else's permission required. The next morning, Brianna didn't come downstairs. Michael found her lying on the bathroom floor, not unconscious, but still, blank-eyed. I stood at the doorway while he knelt beside her. "Call someone," I said. He looked up. "Who?" "A doctor, a therapist, anyone she'll actually listen to." And then I turned away, not out of cruelty, but because I'd already lived that part of the story, and I wasn't going back to it. Not again. It took 3 days for the professionals to arrive. A private nurse first, mild, competent, with a clipboard and soft sneakers. She moved through the house quietly, like someone taught to cause no ripples. Brianna didn't argue. She barely spoke. Just nodded when asked if she'd eaten, if she remembered the date, if she could spell world backwards. She got it wrong. Michael followed the nurse around like a shadow. He kept repeating phrases like, "This is temporary," and "She just needs rest." I didn't correct him. I wasn't there to soothe him anymore. The next day came the psychiatrist. Young, direct, polite. He met with Brianna upstairs for almost an hour. When he left, he stopped by the kitchen where I was slicing apples. "Ms. Henshaw, I just want to tell you, she's experiencing something called rebound fog. Not uncommon when people abruptly stop high-dose supplements they've depended on for years." I nodded, not looking up. I assumed as much. He hesitated. "She also mentioned she's been under a lot of stress. Managing your care," she said, "that it's been overwhelming." "She created that system," I said, still slicing. "I never asked for it." He didn't reply. By Friday, Brianna was walking more steadily, but her eyes were different. Duller, like something inside had gone quiet. She avoided me. No more passive-aggressive smiles. No more controlled cheer. Just silence. A kind of defeated, low-burning silence. Michael tried to smooth the air between us. He made dinner twice that week. Nothing fancy, just soup and sandwiches. But he set the table like it mattered. He asked me questions about my garden, about my favorite books, things he hadn't asked in years. It was something, a small something. But I wasn't rushing to hand him back trust just because he remembered how to look at me. That weekend, I called a lawyer. His name was Daniel Hoyt, mid-50s, firm handshake. He came to the house at my request. We met in the dining room while Brianna napped upstairs and Michael pretended not to be listening from the hallway. "I want to revoke any power of attorney Brianna holds," I said first. He nodded. "We can do that. And I want to reinstate full control over all medical and financial decisions." "Of course." He pulled out the paperwork. I signed without hesitation. Then I handed him a small folder with my updated will, written quietly the month before, when I'd started to see the end of this path. "I've made changes," I said. "Michael gets what's fair, but not until he's learned to stand without me." Mr. Hoyt didn't ask questions, just made the notes. "And I'd like to create a trust," I added, "for someone who hasn't tried to erase me." He looked up. "For my granddaughter. From my daughter, Claire." He nodded. "Do you want that noted today?" "Yes, all of it." We finished the paperwork in under an hour. Before he left, he paused. "I work with a lot of families," he said. "Most stories aren't as clean as people pretend. But you're the first I've met who waited this long to claim her voice." I smiled, tired but steady. Sometimes we're taught that silence is the same as love. He nodded. "It's not." After he left, I went to my room, pulled out the scarf I hadn't worn in years. The blue one, soft wool, frayed at the ends. The one my husband bought me our last winter together. I wrapped it around my shoulders and looked at myself in the mirror. There she was, the woman I'd forgotten. Still standing. Still here. Brianna started speaking again on Sunday. Not much, and not well. But the silence cracked. It began at breakfast. I was slicing peaches at the counter. She entered the kitchen in her robe, hair unwashed, her feet bare against the tile. For a second, she looked like someone else. Not the version of her that ran the house like a spreadsheet, but just a woman, worn down, unsure of where she'd gone wrong. "I remember the first time I saw you," she said suddenly, without preamble. "At Michael's graduation." I didn't look up. "You were wearing a green dress, I remember." She hesitated. "You brought him a pen for his new job." "Engraved," I said, "with his initials." Silence again. "I thought you were soft," she said. This time I looked at her. "You thought I was weak," I corrected. She didn't deny it. "I grew up watching my mother fade into nothing," she said. "No control, no opinions, just cooking and being quiet. I swore I'd never live like that. So you made sure no one else could either." She flinched at that, but didn't argue. "I didn't mean to erase you," she said. "I thought I was helping. You thought control was care." She nodded slowly. "I don't know who I am without routines. That's not my problem to solve." Her lips tightened. I could see it was hard for her, speaking without having the last word. But she was learning. That afternoon, Michael called a family meeting. Just the three of us. No nurse, no therapist. Just us, around the dining table where we hadn't sat together in weeks. He looked tired. Not the kind of tired you fix with sleep. The kind that comes from too many years of deferring. "I've spent the last few days thinking," he began, folding his hands. "I need to say some things. So do you." Brianna sat across from me, silent. "I let things happen," he said. "I thought I was keeping peace, but I wasn't. I was avoiding discomfort." No one interrupted. You didn't deserve what happened, Mom. I know, I said. I'm sorry. He didn't expect forgiveness. That's what made it almost believable. Brianna cleared her throat. I'm sorry, too. I looked at her. For what? She paused. For assuming I had the right to decide what your life should look like. I nodded. That's a start. Michael exhaled, relieved, like a weight had shifted. I've contacted a senior care advocate, he said. Not for moving out. Just someone to help sort what you want. What independence looks like for you. Good, I said, because I already have a lawyer. That caught them both. I've revoked the power of attorney, updated my will, moved most of my funds to a trust. You'll get what's fair, Michael, when the time is right. He didn't argue. And as for day-to-day decisions, I added, those are mine alone. This is not a negotiation. Brianna swallowed hard. Michael nodded. We sat in silence after that. Not heavy, not tense, just quiet. Like something unfinished had finally found its last page. When the meeting ended, I went to my room, closed the door, sat on the edge of my bed, and let my body breathe. Not just air, space, choice. My own life again, at last, returned to me. It's strange how quickly peace begins to feel like a room you forgot was in your own house. By Monday, the air inside the home was different. Not warmer, not yet, but still. Settled. As if everyone had decided to stop pretending they knew best. Brianna stayed quiet. She moved slower, more deliberate. She no longer made smoothies at 6 a.m. or dictated the grocery list. She hadn't opened her laptop in 4 days. Sometimes I'd catch her standing at the window, hands clasped in front of her like someone waiting to be told where to go. But no one was telling her anything anymore. Michael kept his distance, careful with his tone, choosing words like a man stepping through snow over ice. He asked before doing anything, before touching the mail, before mentioning appointments. It was awkward, but honest. For once, that was enough. As for me, I made a call. Claire, my daughter. We hadn't spoken regularly in years, not because we didn't care, but because life had taken us in different orbits. Her job, her kids, my years tied up in Michael's world. But she was still mine. Still the only one of the 3 children who never asked for anything I hadn't offered. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Mom? I closed my eyes a second before answering. Her voice sounded the same. Bright, grounded, slightly rushed, like she was always between errands. Hi, sweetheart. A pause. Then, are you okay? I am now. That's all it took. She didn't press. She said she could drive down this weekend, bring the youngest, just for the day. I said yes before she could finish the sentence. After we hung up, I felt something settle inside me. Not pride, not vindication. Just a soft kind of relief. Like a room I'd left locked had finally been opened. That afternoon, I took out the financial folder I'd hidden for years, tucked away behind old tax returns, under the box of Christmas linens no one ever used. Every check, every receipt, every transfer I'd made to Michael and Brianna. School tuition, home renovations, loan forgiveness, supplements, vitamins, and all the organic solutions Brianna insisted we try. I stacked the papers in neat piles, labeled them, sealed them in an envelope with my name on the front. Later, I placed the envelope on Michael's desk. No note, no explanation, just proof. Let them sit with the math of what it had cost me to keep the peace. That evening, Michael came into the living room holding the envelope. His face was pale. I didn't know it was all this, he said. I know. I thought it was just help here and there. You didn't want to know, I said. He didn't argue. Is this why you stopped trusting me? I looked at him carefully. No. I stopped trusting you when you let someone else decide I didn't know what was best for my own body. He lowered his head. I should have listened. Yes, I said quietly. You should have. That was the end of it. No drama, no begging, no promises. We were past that. The next day, Brianna left the house for the first time in a week. She came down dressed in jeans and a sweater, her keys in hand. Her hair was brushed, but not styled. Her makeup gone. I have a doctor's appointment, she said to no one in particular. I didn't respond. She lingered a moment by the door, then said, without looking at me, "Thank you for not ruining my life." I sipped my tea. It wasn't mine to ruin. She nodded, then left. The house felt quieter after that, not because someone was missing, but because the noise of control had finally gone still. I stood in the kitchen, washed a single cup, and looked out at the garden. The late flowers were drooping now, but the soil was still strong. I decided I'd plant something new next week, something that would bloom in spring. My own name on the seed packets, my own hands in the dirt. Just mine. I didn't tell anyone when I went to the bank. It was a small branch 10 minutes away, tucked between a dental office and a dry cleaner. I dressed plainly, slacks, button-down blouse, my coat zipped all the way despite the warm day. The same way I used to dress when I took care of things no one else wanted to. The manager was new, young, polite, efficient. He asked for ID, smiled too much, didn't recognize my name until he pulled up the accounts. Then his face changed. "Would you like to sit down?" he asked. "I'd like to transfer control," I said. "Today." He glanced at the screen again. "Ma'am, just to confirm, you're the primary holder on all 3 of these accounts?" "I am." "And you'd like to remove the secondary access?" "Yes, permanently." He didn't argue, just typed, printed, slid forms across the desk. I signed them slowly, one by one, line by line. With each stroke of the pen, I felt something release. Not anger, not even grief, just weight. 30 minutes later, I walked out of that building, feeling 20 pounds lighter. Not because I'd regained something, but because I'd finally stopped pretending I hadn't given it away. That night, I made dinner. Not out of habit or guilt or peacekeeping, but because I wanted to. A roast chicken, potatoes, green beans, no substitutions, no comments about sodium or starch or health consciousness, just food, prepared the way I'd done it all my life, before someone decided I'd forgotten how. Michael and I ate in silence. Brianna was still at her mother's, taking time, supposedly, to reflect. I didn't ask when she was coming back. I didn't need to know. After we cleared the plates, I poured a cup of tea and sat by the window. The streetlights flickered on one by one, softening the edges of the yard. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked, the familiar rhythm of a life I had stopped hearing. Michael stood awkwardly in the doorway. "Mom? Yes? Are you planning to stay here?" "For now." He shifted. "Or were you thinking of—" "I've already found a place," I said. He blinked. "You have?" "An apartment, just a few streets over. Quiet. First floor, near the library." He sat down across from me. "Why didn't you say anything?" "I wasn't sure you'd hear it." He looked down. "When?" "Next month." He nodded slowly. "Can I help?" "No." Another silence. Then, "I miss how we used to be." I looked at him carefully. That version of us depended on me pretending. He closed his eyes for a moment. "I didn't mean to let it go this far." "I know." "But you're leaving." I'm returning to myself." He didn't respond, just sat there, not arguing, not apologizing again, just absorbing. That, at least, felt real. Later in my room, I began packing slowly, one box at a time, not rushing, not escaping, just sorting, choosing what to carry forward, what to leave behind, what to reclaim. It started with a missed meeting. Brianna was supposed to present a wellness workshop for one of her long-term clients, a women's group she'd worked with for years. They'd promoted her name, printed flyers, booked the space, but she never showed up. Didn't call, didn't write, just vanished from the schedule. I found out 2 days later when one of her colleagues called the house line, asking if she was okay. "She hasn't answered texts in 4 days," the woman said. "That's not like her." Michael apologized, said she was dealing with a medical issue, but he didn't offer more. After he hung up, he sat at the kitchen table with his head in his hands for almost 20 minutes. "I think she's spiraling," he finally said. I didn't reply. It wasn't that I lacked sympathy, but sympathy was not the same as rescue. I'd lived too long at the bottom of someone else's good intentions to forget the difference. "She won't talk to me," he added, "because she knows you can't fix it." He looked at me. "Do you think I caused this?" "You didn't cause it," I said, "but you built the house she came undone in." He didn't ask what I meant. He knew. The next day, Brianna came home. I heard the car before I saw her, the low, steady hum of tires on gravel. She came through the door slowly, her bag slung over one shoulder. No dramatic entrance. No explanation. Just a woman returning to a place that no longer bent around her. Michael stood, uncertain whether to hug her. She brushed past him gently and went straight to the guest room, the room I was preparing to leave. We didn't speak until the following morning. She knocked on my door, hesitated, then stepped in without waiting for an answer. "You're really going?" she said. Not a question. "Yes." She looked around. Boxes stacked by the wall, books, photos, my red coat draped over the chair like an old friend waiting patiently. "I thought you'd stay," she said. "I thought you'd let me." She nodded slowly. "I didn't understand," she said, "what it felt like." "No," I agreed. "You didn't." "I'm sorry." I didn't answer. "I've been tired for a long time," she said. But I kept pushing. I thought if I controlled every detail, I'd stay ahead of the fear. "What were you afraid of?" She looked at me then, really looked. "Losing myself." I nodded. "So you buried mine instead." She sank into the chair across from me. Not defensive, not collapsed, just present, for the first time. "I've been having panic attacks," she said, "and I don't trust myself anymore. I can't tell what's real. I forgot simple things. I stood in the bathroom last week and couldn't remember how to brush my teeth." "I know." She exhaled. "The pills I took. What were they?" "Mine." "And you knew they'd do this to me?" "No. I knew what I was like without them. I thought you deserved to understand the shape of that silence." She nodded slowly. "I hated you for it. And I still think about what could have happened." "So do I." Another silence. Then she asked, "How did you come back from it?" I looked at her. This woman who had rewritten my life into a schedule, a supplement plan, a safety protocol. I remembered who I was before everyone else had an opinion. She didn't speak, just sat with that. Before she left the room, she paused by the door. "I might not deserve it, but I hope one day we can start again." I didn't promise anything. That was the difference now. No more promises, just decisions. My own. I moved out on a Wednesday. No big scene. No gathering of family. No photos of boxes stacked by the door or sentimental speeches about new beginnings. Just me, the movers, a quiet key exchange, and a space that finally belonged only to me. The apartment was smaller than the house, but not cramped. One bedroom, wide windows, a little balcony that overlooked a row of maples just beginning to turn. The floors were old wood, with the kind of creaks that spoke rather than complained. The kitchen had just enough room for the essentials: my kettle, my mugs, the red Dutch oven I refused to give up. I unpacked slowly. Let the silence fill the rooms on its own terms. No one telling me when to eat, when to rest, what I'd forgotten. Just space. That first night, I sat in my chair by the window and didn't turn on the television. I listened to the building settle, to the distant hum of someone's dishwasher down the hall. I drank my tea and watched the last of the sun slide behind the trees. And I felt calm, not triumphant, not giddy, just calm. Michael stopped by the next day with a set of extra towels and a lamp I'd left in the garage. "You sure you don't want help setting up the Wi-Fi?" he asked. "I've got it," I said. He looked around, taking in the space like it was a stranger. "It's nice." "I think so." He stood awkwardly for a moment, then placed the towels on the counter. "Brianna's looking into therapy," he said. I nodded. She started a journal. She's trying not to control everything. I didn't answer. She wants to apologize again. She already did. He exhaled. I think she thought it would fix something. It doesn't. He looked down. Are we okay? I studied him for a long moment. We're better than we were, I said. But we're not done. He nodded. That's fair. Before he left, he hugged me, the way sons do when they remember who their mothers are. Not protectors, not burdens, just women who lived full lives before they were born. That night, Claire called again. Her voice carried laughter this time, a lightness I hadn't heard in months. I showed Max the picture you sent, she said. He said your place looks like a movie set. Tell him I'll send popcorn. We talked for 20 minutes, about nothing urgent, just the small things that make a day feel real. After we hung up, I opened the sliding door to the balcony and stood outside. The air was cool, the kind that hints at winter. Somewhere below, someone was grilling, the faint scent of smoke rising through the air. I closed my eyes and let it wash over me. I wasn't healed, I wasn't whole, but I was no longer erased, and that was enough. For now. It surprised me how quickly my body remembered peace. Not just the sleep, though that came, deeper and longer than it had in years, but the small things. The way I breathed while cooking. The rhythm of folding laundry without listening for footsteps. The quiet joy of choosing what to do next without waiting for someone to approve it. I started waking up before my alarm. I made eggs the way I liked them, not the way Brianna thought was healthier for my age. I stopped checking the clock for her schedule. My days belonged to me now, and it didn't feel like freedom the way people talk about in books. It felt like finally being able to stand up straight. The nurse they'd hired, Camille, still came once a week to the old house. She called to check in on me too, just to be sure I wasn't letting my independence become isolation. I appreciated that. Not because I needed monitoring, but because she asked rather than assumed. I see a lot of women your age, she said once, but not many who claim their life back midstream. It wasn't about reclaiming it, I told her. It was about remembering I never gave it away. Michael visited now and then. Short visits, polite. He brought groceries once, and we sat on the balcony while the coffee steeped. "You've changed," he said. "No," I replied. "I've returned." He looked down. "I don't know how to be with that yet." "You don't have to. You just have to let it be." He nodded. "We didn't need more than that." Brianna sent a letter, not an email, not a message. A real letter, written by hand, in small, careful script on thick paper. She said she wasn't asking for forgiveness, but wanted to explain. That she had spent too long mistaking control for love, perfection for stability. That her own mother had folded under pressure, and she'd sworn never to do the same, but in doing so, had built a cage of her own making. "I see now that I didn't try to help you," she wrote. "I tried to fix you, and there was nothing broken." I read it once, then again. Then I folded it and placed it in a drawer. Not to keep, but not to throw away either. That was where we stood now. Not back in each other's lives, but no longer denying the damage either. A kind of truce, one I didn't need to announce. Around the second week in my new place, I met the woman next door, Elaine. 72, sharp as glass, hair white and cut close to her chin. She knocked on my door with a plate of shortbread and a matter-of-fact invitation to sit on her patio the following Tuesday. "We have a sort of quiet circle out here," she said. "Women like us. We don't explain ourselves. We just sit." That was all I needed to hear. That Tuesday, I took my chair over and sat beside her and two others. No introductions, no prying. Just the sun, the scent of coffee, and the soft, steady pulse of women who had lived long enough to know what silence meant, and how to hold it without fear. I didn't tell them everything, not yet. But I didn't feel like a stranger either. And that, more than anything, told me I was exactly where I needed to be. Finally. It wasn't until the first rain in October that I let myself cry. Not a storm, just one of those slow, steady rains that tap against the window pane like an old friend reminding you they're still around. I was sitting at the table, a book open in front of me, tea cooling untouched, and I just wept. Not from sadness, not even relief, but because I finally felt the weight of how long I'd been holding it all in. I didn't sob, didn't make noise. Just let the tears fall, one after another, like a release valve quietly opening after too much pressure. The room held me. The chair, the walls, even the silence. No one interrupted. No one asked why. No one offered a solution. It was just me, and the rain, and the truth of what it cost to stay silent for so long. When it passed, I felt clean. Hollow in a good way. Like something had been poured out that was never meant to be carried this long. The next day, I bought chrysanthemums from the market and planted them in pots on the balcony. Deep gold, burnt orange, soft violet. The kind of colors that don't beg for attention, but still hold their place in the world. That weekend, Claire brought Max. He's taller now. 13. Quiet in the way bright boys often are. Watching everything, testing the air before he speaks. He hugged me a little tighter than last time, sat beside me on the couch, and asked if I still had that old chess set. "I do," I said, "but only if you're ready to lose." He grinned. Claire watched us from the kitchen, smiling in that tired maternal way that says, "Let me rest just a minute." I told her she could lie down in the bedroom if she wanted. She did. So it was just me and Max, the board between us, the soft hum of fall outside. He played sharper than before, less impulsive. He took his time. "Mom says you're living alone now," he said, mid-game. "I am. Is it weird?" "Sometimes, but not bad weird." He considered that. "Did you want to leave?" "Yes." Another pause. "Did they want you to?" "Not at first." He didn't press, just nodded and made his move, a smart one. "Are you mad at them?" he asked. I thought a moment. I was. Now I'm awake. He looked at me sideways. "That's not a normal answer." "No," I smiled. "But it's an honest one." He lost the game by 2 pieces, but didn't sulk. Just asked if I wanted to play again next time. When they left, Claire hugged me longer than usual. Her hands were cold from carrying groceries, but her face was warm. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "I'm just late to the party," I said. "You're right on time." That night, I lit a candle. Just one, small and steady. The kind I used to keep hidden in drawers because someone decided scent was overstimulating for guests. I watched it flicker in the dark and thought of all the women I'd known who had vanished inside their own homes, and all the ways I'd stopped myself from becoming one of them. I wasn't angry anymore, just aware of what I almost let slip away, of what I still had left, of what it meant to come back not louder, but clearer. Part of me still grieved, not for what was lost, but for how quietly it had happened. And another part? It was already planning the next set of chrysanthemums. Spring would come again, and this time, I'd be ready for it. Somewhere along the way, I stopped counting what they took from me. I no longer keep a list in my head of what went unsaid, what was locked away, what kindnesses were disguised as decisions. The ledger is closed. The balance has shifted. And what's left now isn't vengeance or even justice. It's space. Space to move without permission. Space to sit without being watched. Space to wake up and not have my day already written for me. And in that space, I've begun again, not from scratch, but from truth. The women on the patio next door, Elaine, Ruth, Marianne, we sit together now every Tuesday without fail. Sometimes we talk. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes one of us brings soup. Sometimes someone just cries and no one rushes to fix it. We are not looking for solutions anymore, just company. And sometimes that's more than enough. Brianna wrote again. This time, she sent a book. A collection of essays about control, caregiving, boundaries. She tucked a note inside. "Page 117 reminded me of you." I read it. It did. But I didn't write back. Some forgiveness takes time. Michael visits once a week. He asks real questions now. He's quieter. He listens. He's trying. And I can see the shape of the boy I raised still flickering in the man he's trying to become. That's something. Claire comes more often. We sit and fold laundry together like we used to when she was a teenager and thought the world might swallow her whole. She says things like, "I'm glad you didn't disappear, Mom." And I say, "Me too," even though part of me still feels like I almost did. Max is growing fast. He beat me at chess last week. Didn't gloat, just smiled the way boys do when they realize they're getting taller than you. I taught him how to make lentil soup from scratch. He said it tasted like real food, which, from a 13-year-old, is high praise. Sometimes I still catch the echo of who I used to be in the smallest things. The way I set the table, how I reach for the light switch at night. But those echoes don't scare me anymore. They remind me I'm still here, still learning how to live without being reduced, still learning how to speak without checking if it's welcome, still learning that the quietest victories often feel the deepest. And if there's anyone reading this, anyone who's been told they're too fragile, too forgetful, too much of a burden, hear this. You are not a project. You are not a mistake to be managed. You are not someone else's version of safe. You are still you, and that is enough. Don't wait for permission to return to yourself. Take it. Start where you are. And if this story spoke to something you've been carrying, quietly, tightly, let it breathe. Leave a comment. Share it. Pass it on. We don't heal by hiding. We heal by remembering we were never broken in the first place.